Hello and welcome to the Real World Podcast. My name's Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support here on the Real World YouTube channel. So if you'll give us a like, hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell to get notifications for all our videos here at the Real World. If you're a movie fan or if you know of someone who is a movie fan, be sure to share this with them. Today on the Real World Podcast, we are discussing our top 5 favorite patriotic movies. So this weekend is the 4th of July, so we thought it would be fun to talk about the best films to watch on Independence Day. This week, I am rejoined by Bert. How you doing?
Hey, Cam, I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. Thanks for coming back and joining us. Took a little break last week. My brother Carson came on so we could talk about our Pixar movies. We ranked all those. So that was a good episode. Go back and listen to that if you haven't already. Today, we're going to be discussing our top 5 patriotic films.
Hey, so Cam, I think we should probably start out by defining how we determine what a patriotic film is. What thought process did you use for that?
Great idea. Yeah, this is a very broad kind of topic. So
Yeah.
It is good to think about how we're going to whittle these down just to 5 movies, which is difficult. So the first thing I asked was, what is patriotism? So I literally just looked up the definition. It means devotion to and or vigorous support of one's country. So then the question becomes, well, how do you devote yourself or support your nation? This is not a political podcast, but for me, the ideals of America are those of individual liberty, truth, justice, entrepreneurism, ingenuity, and the underdog spirit. These are kind of ideas that I was thinking about while I was looking at what kind of movies I was going to be putting in this list. A lot of people, their mind usually runs towards military and towards war, but I kind of veered away from that. I wanted my list to be a little bit more unique. And so again, I'm looking at, those ideals that I just talked about. So I kind of came up with 5 criteria. One, they had to showcase those very American, kind of ideas. Number 2, I wanted the films to be made by an American director and star an American actor. A third one was it had to take place in America. So all of my movies are completely shot in this country. Another criteria that I thought would be fun to put on myself, each movie had to be from a different decade. So I ended up going back and looking through the decades of film. So each movie is going to be from a different era of American history. And then my final criteria was I had to have rated it 5 stars. So these are all like some of my favorite movies, not just my favorite patriotic movies. So that's what I was thinking about when I was putting together my list. Bert, what were you thinking about when you were putting together yours?
Yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive analysis of determining how you're gonna. And I like a lot of those things. There's nothing wrong with any of those. My list is basically, I guess you could say, a little simpler. Movies that make me feel good about my country. So make movies that make me feel good about being an American. And so it was, that was kind of a catch-all, honestly, I don't have a lot of 5-star films in here. So that's part of the problem. I'm glad we didn't both have to necessarily adhere to that criteria, but you've seen, I think, probably a lot more films than I have. Obviously a lot of great ones in your mind too. But in any case, yeah, that's how. So basically, it's pretty broad. If it makes me feel good about being an American, it qualifies.
Awesome. I like it. All right. So let's jump right into our top 5 patriotic films list. Bert, you go ahead and kick us off. What's your number 5?
All right. My number 5 is Apollo 13.
Great pick.
It's a tremendous historically factual period drama. Obviously one of the best directors, Ron Howard, great cast, one of the best film scores that I've ever heard. And this, Apollo 13 really makes you feel like you are back in that time period, back in the 60s. It makes you feel like you're on board the shuttle. And the lengths that Ron Howard went to keep the accuracy of it. I don't know if you've ever watched any of the behind the scenes of this film, but I mean,
I don't think I have.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot, if not most of the dialogue is taken from the actual transcripts
Wow.
of what the astronauts said, because all that's recorded. And then of course the astronauts or at the time, most, if not all of them were still alive. So they were consulted. In fact,
Right.
the astronauts, the main astronauts do a commentary track.
Oh, wow.
on the, at least on the DVD. I'm not sure about the Blu-ray.
Okay.
And talk about some of the discrepancies and that kind of thing. But they were
Sure.
heavily consulted, obviously.
Great.
And it just feels really good watching a film like that, because you're like, wow, this was actually a true film.
Yeah.
This actually is what happened. And there's just down to things like, there's a couple quick shots of Jim Lovell's home in
Mm.
Texas, in Houston, Texas,
Yeah.
and they found a home or decorated a home to look exactly like his real home. And I guess it still looks like that today, or at least did
Wow.
back when the movie came out. The 60s home still looked like that. And so
Yeah.
they found a house that looked like that, even though they didn't need to.
Wow.
And then there's there's a scene where Marilyn drops her ring down the shower drain in the midst of all the tension and all that. It's just kind of a random thing, but it's because it really happened in real life. I think she was
Wow.
staying at a motel temporarily, and she lost her ring down this motel shower drain.
Wow.
And then the scenes with have you've seen Apollo 13? I
I've
take
seen
it.
it. I've only seen it once, but I have seen
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. So the scenes where they're in apparently in zero gravity, Ron Howard really did simulate the zero gravity by taking them in the up on one of those planes that does the the they go way up and then turn around and come back down,
Right.
and they've
Right.
got about 45 seconds, I think, or something like that, of
Wow.
zero G. And so they really did that. I think like 100 times they made that
Oh,
journey.
man.
And other films have since done that. Like I think in Maverick they did that.
Right.
Wasn't there a bit of weightlessness in Maverick?
I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe, or maybe it's another film I've seen recently,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's since been done, quite a few times to help
Right.
simulate that, because otherwise you're just kind of, like on a stick, or, like the movie Gravity actually did a lot of really neat
Right.
tricks to simulate zero G, but I don't think they
Yeah.
did any actual zero G, but
No,
Ron
I don't
Howard
think
really
so.
did way back in
Yeah.
95 to
Mm.
simulate that. A lot of the actors, it was difficult on the stomach to do those kind of loops like that. And
Sure. I'm
so
sure. Yeah.
the plane they were in, they nicknamed the Vomit Comet, because yeah, it caused that to occur, I guess, one or more times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is a film that just like I said, it just makes me feel good to be an American when I see this film and the
Mhm.
accomplishments, even though the mission itself was, it's based on, the fact that this mission was fraught with a lot of problems. Obviously,
Right.
that creates a lot of the tension, but it's part of our history. And it just, you really feel like NASA was probably closely involved in the making of the film. I wouldn't doubt it with
Yeah.
Ron Howard.
Sure.
Do you have thoughts about the film itself from your viewing?
We should also mention we don't know what's on each other's list, so
Yeah, that's right.
this is all news to me. So,
Right,
but
right.
yeah, great movie. I mean, I saw it fairly recently. I want to say last year was the first time I ever watched
Mm,
it, and really, really well done. Yeah, like you mentioned, the tension that they build, I mean, is just really
yeah,
incredible. The kind of claustrophobic nature of them, being in
yeah,
this ship. The cast is phenomenal. Of course, you got Tom Hanks. Kevin Bacon is great. This is one of his probably his best performances, I think.
yeah.
Gary
He's willing to kind
Sinise.
of be sort of a bad guy, not a bad guy,
Yeah.
not at all a bad guy. I didn't mean
Right,
that. I
right.
just mean
More
he's willing to sort of be
antagonistic.
that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. He does a great job. Gary Sinise, of course, is wonderful. And Ed
Yeah,
Harris,
yeah,
of course, is
yeah.
great as well as always. He's so
Right,
good. And yeah, Ron Howard, he's just one of the best directors. I mean, he really knows how to get good performances out of his actors because he's
right.
an actor himself. He's got that
Yeah.
background. And so,
Yep.
yeah, just a really well made movie from
Hmm.
just the story to the performances to the effects. And yeah, that behind the scenes info you gave was great. I didn't know they went through all that to make it as authentic as possible. That's so
Yeah, there's so
important.
much more to it, but that's just a few examples of some
Yeah,
of the things
no, but
the links they went
that's
to.
yeah, it's so important when doing a biopic, a true story. A movie that I'll mention, First Man, which I don't know if you've
Oh,
seen, just came out a
I
couple
have not
years
seen
back.
that.
Yeah, it just
Okay.
came out a couple years ago. It's about Neil Armstrong.
Oh,
It's focused all
okay.
on him and his life,
Is
in
it
Apollo 11.
dramatized or is it a documentary?
It's not a documentary. No, it is dramatized. It
Oh,
is
okay.
Ryan Gosling plays Neil Armstrong, does a phenomenal job in the
Oh,
role. Damien Chazelle directed it. He's the guy, young director behind La La Land and Whiplash.
oh. Yeah,
So
Whiplash
the
was good. Yeah, I
Whiplash is
saw that.
great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He's a
intense.
really talented director, and this is only his third movie, but
Oh, okay.
uh, really, really well made film on
Hmm.
every level. So if you're at all interested in NASA, astronaut, space race, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, highly recommend First Man. It
Okay.
is really
Okay.
great movie. Yeah, good. Anything else to add about Apollo 13?
Just that I, it's a great drama. There's nothing really wrong with it per se. It may be a little slow at times, like a little long.
Okay.
But I ranked my five in the order of enjoyability.
Okay.
Yeah, it's either a 4 star or 4.5, I guess is the
Okay.
best way to put it then.
Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
rated it a 4 star when I watched it. It's really
Uh-huh.
solid all around.
It is. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, I'll go ahead and jump into my number five, I guess. Our number five is The Rocketeer.
Ah,
So, The Rocketeer is this movie that came out in 91, has a runtime of an hour and 48 minutes. Budget was $35 million. Ended up only grossing 46 million, so it's a box office flop, but that says nothing about the quality of the movie. It was all
hmm.
about the timing of the release and the marketing was to blame for the low gross, because this is such a fun movie. Joe Johnston directs this. It's his second
Oh,
film he ever directed. He's a big special effects guy, worked at ILM on the Star Wars films.
didn't he
He
work in Jurassic Park too, or no? Isn't
he
he?
did, I think he did some work on Jurassic Park as
Or
well. I know
didn't
he
he
was
direct one of the Jurassic Parks, or am I
he
thinking of?
directed Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
right.
that's the same guy.
That's
Okay,
what he did. Same guy.
that's what I was
Yep.
thinking. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, the only movie he had directed up to this point was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which is a great movie, great directorial
Yeah. Yeah.
debut. But he comes out with his sophomore film here. It's based on a comic book created by a guy named Dave Stevens. He created this character
Mm,
back in 1982. So this
okay.
character hadn't been around for that long,
Yeah.
but Stevens always wanted the comic book to be a movie. That was kind of always his intention behind it when
Hmm.
creating the comic book. He always wanted it to be made into a feature film. So he got his wish. This movie, it takes place in 1938, one of my favorite eras of history, just because
Mm,
of
yeah.
the aesthetic, the kind of
Yeah.
architecture, the design of the fashion and the cars and
Yeah.
all of it. I just really like that era of American history. So this is post World War One, pre World War Two, and it very much is a kind of throwback to those pulpy adventure serials and comic books of that era. I looked up, why did they call them pulp magazines? I always wondered that, and it's actually because of the cheap
Paper, right?
wood pulp
Yeah.
paper. Yep,
Yeah.
that's what they printed these stories on. So because these
Yeah.
were kind of run of the mill, children's stories, considered low quality literature, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Precursor to comic books, basically. But I just have a soft spot for that as a comic book fan growing up.
Hmm.
I think this is just one of my favorite kind of genres. But they really capture that 30s Americana feel. The tone
Yeah.
is just perfect in this movie. It's that perfect balance of kind of old school retro feel, kind of high adventure with kind of grounded and likable characters and real stakes. I think it's all
Hmm.
there. I think they do a great job with the casting in this movie. We have Jennifer Connelly as Jenny Blake, who's kind of not your typical damsel in distress. She has actually a lot of agency in herself. She's pretty cunning. She's, of course, this beautiful, aspiring actress, but she has a lot of ingenuity in herself and has some really great moments in the movie. Alan Arkin as Peavy, he's kind of the mentor figure,
He's
kind of,
hilarious.
and he's comic relief. He's so
Yeah.
funny. His delivery of all the lines is so good. He's sort of the voice of reason for our hero. And then you have an actor named Paul Sorvino,
Oh yeah.
who
Yeah.
plays Eddie Valentine, who's typecast as the Italian mobster. And I think every movie he's
Hey,
ever
he's
been
in.
in.
Yeah. Goodfellas. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great,
Yeah.
and he does a great job as kind of that scary mob boss. He's, got
Uh-huh.
this very distinct voice and he's a very
Yeah.
cool character. You have a guy named Tiny Ron Taylor. This guy was over 7 feet tall,
Oh,
and he was a basketball player who
really? Oh,
ended up getting into acting. Yeah,
yeah. A
and
lot of, yeah, it happens.
he played a lot of roles. He's in Ace Ventura. He's in Naked Gun. He's in Roadhouse. Last
Okay.
Man Standing. He played a couple of creatures on Star Trek, a
Oh,
couple of the Star Trek series. But here he's basically playing this giant
hmm,
henchman who's
yeah.
coming after our hero, and very scary. They put on these prosthetics on him to make him look even scarier,
Oh,
make him look more comic booky. He's got this real distinct jawline, big
yeah.
ears, big
Yeah.
nose, which I thought was really cool. And they did a
Hmm.
good job with his character. Of course, Timothy Dalton plays Neville Sinclair,
Hmm.
who's kind of this very Errol Flynn-esque character, this
Sure.
30s actor. who you end up finding out is a Nazi spy. Plays a great villain. I think Timothy Dalton does an excellent job in this role. He's very charming and everything, but he's got this kind of sinister underbelly in his
Mhm.
character that's really, really good. And of course, Billy Campbell as Cliff Secord. I don't know why this guy never became a huge all-star actor. He's
Yeah,
excellent in this
because
movie.
the
He's
movie
so
flopped, I guess.
I
Not enough
guess
people saw
so.
it.
I guess so, unfortunately. But he just does such a good job. He's kind of this very classic hero, just kind of just handsome, kind of roguish, very individualist, who's got this skill set. He's a stunt pilot, but he's got flaws too. He can be very reckless. He's a little stupid at times. But he doesn't really think before he acts sometimes, but he's very endearing character who I think it's easy for the audience to root for, and he's very romantic as well. He's got this relationship with Jenny, that's very believable. I think they both have great chemistry in the film, and that's what I like about it. It's just about kind of a regular guy who has greatness thrust upon him. He's given this finds this rocket pack, who as I mentioned, the Nazis and the mob are both after. The FBI is also after this rare item, which you later find out has been created by Howard Hughes, who has a smaller role in the film, but an important one. And he's played by an actor I really like called Terry O'Quinn. He was on a show I watched called Lost. He
Oh
was one
yeah,
of
I
the
know who
main
that is.
characters. Yeah, he played
Yeah, the
Locke.
guy in the wheelchair. Isn't he in a wheelchair?
Yeah, he's in the wheelchair. Yep, yep.
Yeah,
At the
yeah,
beginning of the
right.
show. Yeah,
Hmm.
he's a great actor and he does an excellent job.
Yeah,
And Howard Hughes is this real person, who
sure,
exists,
right.
of course. And he was another one I thought of when I thought about these patriotic films. I thought about including The Aviator, which is
Yeah.
a movie that I really like, a
Is that
Scorsese film.
DiCaprio?
It's DiCaprio
Yeah,
as
I've seen
Howard
that. I've seen
Hughes.
that. Yeah.
Such a good movie. He's such an important figure in American history as that kind of entrepreneur
Mhm.
character. He's a genius inventor, and I like his role in the movie a lot because he's confronted by these government agents, who after the rocket is lost, they instantly ask him, "So how quickly can you rebuild it?" And he says, "Well, I'm not going to rebuild it." And because he realizes that people in Washington want to turn anything that flies into a weapon. This is line to the government
Yeah.
agent, and so I just like that whole element of it as well. The FBI, I like incompetent FBI agents, and these guys are just that. They end
Yeah.
up bringing him what they think is the rocket pack. It ends up being a vacuum cleaner, which is a great moment in the movie. And going back to our hero Cliff, his first interaction with an FBI agent, he punches him in the face.
Mm.
So that kind of stick it to the government mentality that I'm a big fan of. Cliff, talking about him a little bit more, just as a great heroic character, he is a great example of an active protagonist, which you always want in your story. Stories sometimes have what's called passive protagonists, which are never as effective, I think,
Oh,
where kind of
yeah.
stuff just happens to them and they're kind of just wandering through the story.
Right.
Whereas Cliff very much takes action. He kind of suits up and becomes the hero in this movie against all odds. After the inciting incident, he kind of takes it upon himself to become the hero and to keep this technology out of the wrong hands. He doesn't use it for selfish gain. He kind of does a little bit. He kind of wants to do that part of him, but he ultimately has a very altruistic attitude about the whole thing, and ends up, helping others with it. So all in all, just a movie I really enjoy. Movie, that has exciting action, good effects. To me, the effects hold up pretty well for it being
Mm.
as old as it is. It's before the CGI days. This is
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
Jurassic Park, kind of broke the
Yeah.
mold,
Right.
and they just did a really good job with it. I really enjoy every second of it. Have a lot of fun watching it, and kind of just one of those classic adventure films again, where the hero beats the bad guys, gets the girl, saves the day. It's kind of that classic kind of formula that just works
Right.
really well.
Right.
Other thing I'll mention is that Dave Stevens, the creator of the character, was heavily involved in the
Mm.
film. He was actually on set almost every day, and he ended up being very satisfied with how it turned out. So that's always good to hear when the
Yeah. Yeah.
creator is on board with the whole thing. So, do
Right.
you have any thoughts on Rocketeer?
Well, that one of the downsides of kind of springing these on each other is, when's the last time we watched it? And for
Right.
me,
That's
it's
true.
been a long time. I saw
Okay.
The Rocketeer in the theater. I remember
Okay.
that.
Oh, cool.
And I really enjoyed it. And
Yeah.
I watched it probably twice on video in the following years.
Okay.
But I need to go back and rewatch it because
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been since the 90s that I've
Okay.
watched it. So it's been a
Okay.
long time.
Sure.
So, I remember the main characters, but
Yeah.
unfortunately not much else.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely highly recommend it. It's available on Blu-ray. I actually have the Blu-ray and it looks great. It was all shot on 35 millimeter, of course, and the transfer is excellent. It's super
Hmm.
detailed and really well done. It's also available on Disney Plus if you have Disney Plus. But this movie, another thing it did, I didn't grow up watching this one.
Hmm.
I was born a year after it came out, and I didn't grow up watching it. But I think it was right after I got into comic books and started researching like comic book movies, and found out that all these came out in the 90s that I wasn't aware of. One that I did grow up with was Zorro. So
Oh, that's
that
a
kind
great
of
movie.
is in the same kind of vein of like
Yeah.
Dick Tracy, I
Hmm.
really like The Phantom, Billy Zane. A lot of people don't like a lot of these. I know I'm very unique in my taste as far as these goes. The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, and The Mask with Jim Carrey. So these are movies that appeal to me and just my sensibilities. Again, they're that very
Sure.
pulpy, very kind of silly,
Mm.
a little over the top, I think, for most modern audiences. But they're just movies that I get a big kick out of. And Rocketeer stands atop all of them as kind of the best of the best. And Joe Johnston would, of course, go on to do Captain America,
Mhm.
the first Avenger, the very first Captain America film,
Yeah.
which is another one kind of in that vein too. Yeah, all in all, again, a big fan of Rocketeer, and that's why it made my number 5. All right, so those are our number 5 entries on our list. Let's jump straight into number 4. What's your number 4, Bert?
Well, my number 4 is a little film that is actually just above your left shoulder called They Live. No, I'm kidding. It's
Oh,
Air Force One.
oh, okay, cool,
The
great,
other one. Yeah, the other one
great,
over your left shoulder. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So Air Force One, first of all, I enjoy a lot of movies that are set in different sort of places, like the confines of an airplane.
Yeah,
And this is one of, maybe the best ones that have that set up.
yeah.
Air Force One it has a great dilemma at the heart of it. Is our president a liability to our country when his wife and daughter are held as ransom, and
Yeah,
and he's only human, so but obviously I think the answer kind of is yes. And so that's a very
right.
interesting, intriguing premise to see
It
play
is.
out. And essentially, he's the most powerful man in the world, but he is turned into something else. He's turned into a father who will do anything to save his family, but at the same time, he's still a person that wants to do anything to save his country. And so it's just a very intriguing setup.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got Air Force One itself, which is a character in this film, of course, and the director Wolfgang Peterson is the
Yep.
director of this film,
Yep.
and he does a very smart job. Anytime there's a big set piece, or I should say like a component or character like that's not a person, of like Titanic, like it's good when a director uses methods to show us the layout of it, or if
Yeah.
we're interested in it, so you can see all the nooks and crannies or whatever you want to see.
Right.
That's
Right.
interesting
Sure.
about Air Force One. I mean, the general public, I think, has an interest in that kind of thing, because who
Yeah.
gets to see it? Nobody ever,
Sure.
except unless you're one of the 50 people that are on it all the
Sure.
time, because apparently there are a lot of people that travel on it, but you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
most people never
Yeah.
get to be on it to see, oh, this is what it's like.
Right.
And I think that Wolfgang Peterson, the director, does a good job of using the sort of villains in the film as a way of giving us a tour of the plane, because
Sure.
at the beginning, they're posing as this what are they, like a media group or something?
Yeah.
And right. And so I think it's maybe the president's press secretary or someone, she gives them the tour, which gives us the tour of it's just a great way to do it. That,
Yeah.
that's
That
the
is
right way
smart.
to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then Gary Oldman is, I mean, he's one of the best villains ever. I mean, he's maybe the best actor you could imagine, first of all. And
Yeah.
he's so good as the bad guy here. He's just
It is.
fantastic.
Yeah.
The film gets right to the action, which
Yeah.
is always good if the action that follows is good, and it
Right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, the terrorists take control of the plane with lots of gunfire and this sort of thing, because apparently that's no problem. I mean, they explain that supposedly it's bulletproof,
Right.
the walls are, and then, that gives the president a chance to sort of escape, in his escape hatch.
Yes.
Uh, uh, Harrison Ford is the perfect actor to play the president, and his character is
Yeah.
written so well.
Yeah.
He's sort of an everyman. He always makes the right moral decision, but you can just, I mean, his Harrison Ford's acting just allows you to see this dilemma and how insane it is, and he has to work that through. I mean, he's just a great actor to play that part. He
Yeah.
does it so well.
Yeah.
Glenn Close is great as the VP here. What's
Yeah.
funny is I can remember back when this came out in the mid 90s. It could have been someone I was with, or maybe I read something about essentially that it was kind of a stretch for a woman to play the VP, and then here we are now.
Right.
It's a reality, and I think that's
Yep.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Certainly. So,
Yeah.
and then Wendy Crewson is the actress that plays the first lady, and the daughter is played by Elisa Matthews. I've not heard of her in other films that I know of, but their parts as women too are very strong. Very good acting, and some of the things that they're put through in the film, they really kind of push the boundaries as far as well, just acting wise. Even the boundaries are really pushed, because it'd be fairly traumatic even acting in those kind of gun against the head,
Right.
do
Yeah.
this or else. I mean,
Right.
goodness. So yeah, those are just acting all around this film is top notch. The president's name is President Mitchell. I had to look it up because I kind of forget what his actual, because he's just Mr. President in the film.
Right.
President Mitchell, and I think he just embodies everything that you'd want in a president. He's not superhuman, and that's another
Right.
thing I like. He doesn't turn into a karate guy or necessarily a firearms expert. And
Right.
again, these
Right.
things are I'm critical, so if he turned in
Sure.
any of those things, I'd be like, what is that?
Right. Right. I think they do mention he was in the military in some respect,
sure.
but yeah, you're right.
Sure.
They don't go crazy with that.
He doesn't turn into Jack Bauer or
Yeah,
Jackie
right.
Chan or anything like that per
Yes.
se. He watches what's happening,
Right.
and he takes liberties based on the errors or gaps that become available to him when he can act.
Sure.
And his character is smart, which an audience always appreciates.
Yes.
We've watched lots of movies where the character just does dumb thing after dumb thing, and you're like, oh, come on, and you feel like they're one step behind, and you like it kind of when the lead is one step ahead. It's much more rewarding.
Sure.
And you get a lot of that kind of stuff in the film. So yeah, it's a great film. I got a couple other comments, but what are your thoughts on They Live? I mean, Air Force One.
Fan of both, obviously, but Air Force One, such a great movie. I mean, really intense. The tension in this film is built so well. Yeah, you mentioned the cast. It's just a tour de force with both Ford and Oldman going head to head. And they only actually have, I think, 1 or 2 scenes together, really. They don't have a whole lot of interaction. But when they do interact, it's a big moment, and it really works. Yeah, you mentioned how smart the character is. That's so important for a movie like this. The screenwriting has to be top notch. Because if he's making a bunch of dumb decisions, the audience is just not going to be with him. And it makes you just like him as a person, makes you like him as a president. I think early in the film, he's talking somewhere about something. I forget exactly what it is, but you just like him in that speech he's giving, before it even gets to the action. So
he's talking about where America's not gonna tolerate acts of terrorism, and they won't give in to demands. So it's a perfect setup to the film, because
that's
then
great.
Literally, it's like the next day,
right. Let's see
scenario gets played out. So
right. Yeah. And he walk the walk and talk the talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great. That's a great thematic thing to do for a film. So that's really cool. It's one I haven't seen in it's been probably about a year or 2 since I've watched it, but it's one I watch, pretty much every year around this time. So I really enjoy it. Great direction. I like you mentioned, the one setting. It's kind of, I wonder if it's one of those is going off of what Die Hard did, right? Die Hard kind of set the precedent for this whole single location action movie. You had that, and then you had Speed, which was
Yeah.
Die Hard on a
Die Hard on a
Bus. Now you
bus.
have Die Hard
Yeah.
on a Plane, you
Right.
know,
And
so
then Snakes on a Plane a few years later.
Snakes on a Plane, right? So yeah, they do a great job with it. It's a movie I
Yeah.
really enjoy, and yeah, everything you said, I just have to echo that because yeah,
Yeah.
solid movie all around. I think I gave this either 4 or 4.5 stars. This is one that I really enjoy.
That's exactly where I'm at, 4 or 4.5 stars.
Yeah,
A couple other things I wanted to mention in this action film. We see Gary Oldman's character's name is Ivan,
yeah,
and at a certain point, you see him truly mourning the loss of one of his men. It's only for a moment,
yeah.
and this is what's missing from so many action
It's
films.
true.
Your
Yeah,
average Michael Bay film. I mean, I'm not the one. I mean, I've read about that too. Like Michael Bay doesn't, he'll just mow people down, and there's no
right.
react. But anyway, this
Yeah,
is those moments are key. And
yes,
there's a great moment when the president calls the White House, and he reaches the switchboard, and he's trying to get through to the war room or whatever it is. He's like, "This is the president," and the switchboard operator is like, "Sure,
yeah, right,
right," and he's like, "Trace the call,"
right,
and she does, and he goes, "Oh, I'll put you right through." So
right. Yeah,
some great stuff like
that
that.
is good. You think they'd have a code word or something?
Yeah, exactly. But it made for a great moment.
It does.
I don't have any real criticisms, but I did want to mention I love some Jerry Goldsmith scores, but it surprises me that some of these action movies that are patriotic kind of get sort of generic, some snare drum like da, 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 like just like a kind of a generic score. And I feel like
Yeah.
this one is sort of generic. Like
Mm,
I've seen the movie probably 8 times over the
yeah.
years, and I even this last time I'm like I can't pick up any kind of like
Theme. Yeah.
yeah, like a recurring, like memorable thing from
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, it's
Right.
serviceable,
Sure.
but
Sure.
Jerry Goldsmith has done. I mean, Hoosiers is so amazing. That film
Yeah.
score. It's all synth, but I
Yeah.
love the music in it. I would kind of
Yes.
wish it was more orchestral, but
Right.
that's a great one. Sleeping with the Enemy has some tremendous themes, and that's
Mm,
Jerry Goldsmith. And then The Edge has a really good theme in it too.
mm.
Russia House that he did. These are all Jerry Goldsmith scores that are really
Sure.
good.
Sure.
But yeah, I will say that some movies, and this is the only one on my list here today, where I was a little disappointed that the film score doesn't echo or sort of emphasize the action.
Mm.
And it seems to more be generic.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
hear
I
you.
think that's why this movie isn't 5 stars for me.
Right. Right. Yeah. It doesn't stand out for me. I don't remember the score very well. I forgot to mention Rocketeer's score by the great James Horner.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
is phenomenal. What a
yeah. Horner's
phenomenal
one of the
score.
best.
Yeah,
Mm.
he's incredible, and he does such a good job with the score on that movie. I
I
mean,
need to rewatch that
really,
movie. Yeah,
really good, really good.
yeah.
All
That's what I've
right,
got.
well, that's what you got for that one. Great. So that was your number four. My number four pick is a movie called The Searchers. Now, The
Hmm.
Searchers is a film released May 16th, 1956. So we're going
Okay.
back quite a ways,
All right.
back into the what I consider the golden age of film. It's a 2 hour runtime. Had a budget of 3.75 million. It's made by one of the great American filmmakers, John Ford. So John Ford is
Oh,
a guy who is kind of known for the Western. That's kind of like
hmm.
what his thing was. He did
Gotcha.
some other movies as well, but he began way back in the silent era. I mean, this guy was making movies back in the
Mm.
1910s. He's one of these just genius filmmakers, kind of an auteur, I would consider him, of early American film, kind of one of the guys that crafted what film is, what cinematic language is. He again, I said worked within the silent era where it was all about the visual. He had to tell a story with these moving pictures, and he very much does that throughout his entire career. And this is one of the later movies that he made. I think he made a couple more after this, but this was kind of the pinnacle of his career. And it's a collaboration, the 12th collaboration between John Ford and actor John Wayne.
Oh,
So
mhm.
these two
John Wayne film.
guys, yeah, these two guys worked together
12
numerous
times.
times,
Wow.
at least 12 times. I think they made
Wow.
one more movie after this. When you think of American filmmaking in general, I think these two guys come to mind because even for as old as their films are, I think they've kind of stuck with us. And you see their influence is another thing. Even if you haven't seen their films, you've seen their influence. They've influenced guys like George Lucas, There are scenes in Star Wars that are directly out of The Searchers. I mean,
Oh,
there's movies that Spielberg has done. He's influenced Martin Scorsese, David Lean. Akira Kurosawa is another big director who has influenced a lot here. And Ford is one of these guys. I got to listen to the commentary on The Searchers, which was not by Ford, but was by a guy named Peter Bogdanovich, who some people might know. He's a director and a film historian, who actually got to know John Ford. He was very young when he was getting into the film industry, and he got to talk with and interview John Ford several times, and John Wayne. The commentary was interesting because he talked a lot about how Ford was one of these directors who had the entire movie planned out in his head before he shot a single frame of footage. But he wouldn't storyboard. He would have a script, but it was literally all in his head. And just to think about, I mean, literally every shot, every edit, everything about the film was planned out in his head. And that's not to say he didn't let actors improvise and figure out new shots on set. He would do that, of course, as well. But he was just one of these guys, these visionary type of directors that just comes around very, very rarely. He did a great job with this movie. This movie, again, talking about the Western in general, I think that's the quintessentially American genre, because it's the only genre that Americans actually created. Every other genre was kind of already out there, but the Western was something that's uniquely American. And so, when we're thinking about American or patriotic films, Westerns always come to my mind. The Searchers is this kind of epic, sort of mythic story, which is grounded very much in humanity and in American history. So this is a film that very much speaks to American history when it comes to frontiersmen and women. It also kind of deconstructs the mythic American gunslinger. It's not your typical Western. It's not your, white hats and black hats showdown in the street. It's not that kind of thing. It's a movie about a man who comes back home from the war, the Civil War, has just ended. This is 1868 in Texas is when it's set. All shot in Monument Valley, beautifully shot in a new format called VistaVision, which Paramount created in 1954, which is this full screen color. It's a beautiful image that they shot. I have it on Blu-ray, and it just looks incredible. I mean, the color, it pops out. But it's a story about this man comes back home from the war, and his niece is kidnapped by Comanche. And so he's on this search along with some other men for her. Tons of, again, these shots of Monument Valley and wandering the desert. I wouldn't call it a fast-paced film, but it moves by pretty quickly at 2 hours. It's pretty tight as far as the story goes. It's one of these that's dealing with these kind of darker themes of American history, themes of vengeance and prejudice. The lead character played by Wayne is by far his most complex character because he's pretty much a racist. And that's pretty overt in the film, his hatred for these Comanche. And you get to learn about his past and why that is, and how he's kind of almost the exact same as, I guess, what you consider the villain of the film, which is this Comanche warrior named Scar, who equally hates the white man, basically, because of what has happened to him in his past. So you have this interesting dichotomy of these two characters who are very similar. They just kind of come from different places. The themes of, again, family, of obsession. There's this whole discussion about family and how it relates to adoption versus your blood family. There's this nephew he has who is 1/8 Comanche, who he is horrible to the entire film. And so, you get that whole interaction as well, which is really interesting. And they just do a good job of presenting these ideas in kind of subtle ways. It's not super overt necessarily. I think it's handled very well. It very much confronts the mistreatment of Native Americans, which the Western genre hadn't really done up until that point. They were kind of always just the bad guys.
Oh,
So it does some really interesting things. I really highly recommend it to those who haven't seen it. There's this great line towards the end of the film. The woman who plays Mrs. Jorgensen, her name is Olive Carey. She's the wife of Harry Carey, who is a famous cowboy actor. And his
Oh,
son Harry,
not not
not
the
the Harry
Cubs
Carey, you're
announcer.
not the Cubs announcer, different guy. Yeah, but his son is also in this movie. Harry Carey Jr. is in the movie and plays a really important role. But she has this line towards the end of the film where she says, "Someday this country is going to be a fine, good place to be. Maybe it needs our bones in the ground before that time can come." And I think that kind of just sums up the whole idea of the film, of these frontiersmen and women who live this very rough life, and they didn't always do what was right, but they got us to where we are today, for good or bad,
Mhm.
is kind of a way
Gotcha.
that they sum it up. Again, it's a movie I thoroughly enjoy. I've seen it a number of times. It was one of the first movies that had any behind the scenes footage,
Oh,
which they included
really?
on the Blu-ray in a really
Oh,
cool way. Yeah,
yeah.
all in all, I would say cinematography wise alone, this
Mhm.
movie is up there with the best of the best. Perfect opening and closing shots. You look at the opening shot of this film, look at the closing shot. It's this perfect full circle kind of story that you get, with all these characters. And so yeah, this is a good one. Have you seen this movie?
No, no, I
Okay.
really haven't heard of it, to be
Okay.
honest.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. But
Yeah.
again, I recommend it, checking it out.
Okay.
It's I don't know where it might be on HBO Max, because I think it is it is a Warner Brothers film. So if you can find it, I definitely recommend it. I think you will see the influence, certainly, of other filmmakers through this movie. All right, so those are the number 4 entries on our list. Let's jump into our number threes. Bert, what's your number 3?
My number three is Independence Day,
Oh, yes.
which
Welcome to Earth.
right, which it's been called ID4 ever since it came out, and it's kind of a strange acronym. Is it an acronym if it has a number in it?
I
I don't know,
guess.
but it just Independence for it doesn't really. I mean, I get Fourth of July, but it's just
Right.
But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So Independence Day. I love disaster films more
Mm,
than maybe some people. I like to see the spectacle of it
right.
and that kind of thing. Some of the ones I've liked are 2012, which I understand you didn't like very much. I like that a lot. Day After
Okay.
Tomorrow, I like that a lot.
Okay.
Dante's Peak is great.
Mm,
Even Volcano and Pompeii, which are just kind of okay movies. I like
okay.
those.
Okay.
The newer Poseidon it's kind of okay, but I like that one.
Okay.
And obviously Independence Day is a large scale, like sort of a worldwide alien invasion film. They
Right.
try to make it give you a feel for like the worldwide feel of it.
Sure.
I saw this film 3 times in the theater.
Wow.
I remember that specifically. It's 2.5 hours long, so that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a commitment.
Sure.
Um, and it's I like it because it's an interesting look about what would happen if an alien ship came here, and what would they do. And it's not the first film that's explored that, but I
Sure.
liked the CGI. And CGI was still pretty new, and this film presented a lot of it. It didn't always succeed, but especially for 96, you really felt like they had really ratcheted it up and made it quite a spectacle with the CGI and that kind of thing. Goldblum, Jeff Goldblum here is porting over some of his Ian Malcolm tendencies, and I think it works really well.
He even says must go faster.
That's a good point. I remember him saying that in Jurassic Park, but I guess I forget where he does in Independence
Yeah,
Day.
when they're
But
leaving the mothership.
oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, I mentioned the CGI. When the trailer first came out, this was a trailer that, it shows the primary attack toward the beginning of the film, and you see the cars sort of like being thrown up in the air and in the city and all this commotion. And it just looked, so grand and
Yeah.
enticing to see on the big screen.
Right.
So
Right.
I really anticipated it, and it fully delivered. It's one of those that I walked out of the theater and said, I can't wait till I see that again. That
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And I think the CGI, I rewatched it again here, and it mostly works, but it is a bit too ambitious, a little too much reliance on it. But everybody was excited to try out this CGI, and let's see what kind of disaster movie we can make now, because I don't know that they had really done one between 93 and 96, like a big Hollywood disaster movie
Yeah, I
with
mean,
CGI. So
Twister is the
this
only one
is,
that comes to mind, but it's not
yeah,
nearly
yeah,
this on this
yeah.
scale quite, you
Right,
know.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so yeah, a little too much CGI, but it looks decent. It's not bad per se. It's just it would be a little better, I think, if they made it today. They could probably make it look a little better. I think they must have used miniatures, and I'm almost sure they did for some of the buildings exploding and the White House exploding. And the miniatures look great when they explode. The slow-mo of the explosions and all that. I mean, thankfully they didn't do CGI for everything, because the
Right.
explosions still look tremendous.
Yes.
And I think to tie this into, I mean, it's not hard to tie it into patriotism. I mean, it's called Independence Day,
Right.
but it's one of these films that kind of shows the U.S. as the savior. The whole world's being attacked, but we're the only ones that have a Jeff Goldblum that can
Right.
that can figure out
Yeah.
how to solve it. So it's about
Right.
our country, and
Yeah.
so it does have that sort of and it's an American made movie. They're not going to make it about, Canadians that
Sure.
figure it out and go up there, and, nor does Canada probably have the defenses and all that necessarily. I mean, maybe they
Right.
do. I don't know. But anyway, so obviously this is showcasing the U.S. Like, we're the ones that are going to fight back. Bill Pullman is good as the president. He's another, like decent, upstanding president. No real faults. I mean, these people don't exist as president in the real world,
Right. Right.
and, his speech to rally the troops it's pretty good. I was watching it and I was thinking, like, how Hollywoodized is this speech, but honestly, it wasn't too over the top. It was just a pretty good rallying speech, that he gives the troops before they go off into that final sort of set
It's perfect
piece.
for this movie.
Yeah,
It's perfect. It
exactly.
fits the
Yeah.
tone of this movie perfectly.
Right, right. The score by David Arnold is good at times, but I will say it does kind of fall into a fair bit of that sort of generic military-ish kind of style. But there are times, like for instance, when the alien ships first do their primary attack, there's some really good orchestral music involved there that I like. And the Area 51 stuff is some of my favorite parts of the film. There's some really cool stuff they do. Like the aliens use Brent Spiner as a puppet to talk through him. And I'd forgotten that. And I watched it again and I thought it's hilarious and creepy
Yeah.
at the same time.
Right.
And I think it's
Yeah.
great that Brent Spiner was the person, obviously being from Star Trek,
Sure.
and he was the person that the actor that was in that role. Anyway, it's pretty creative and creepy and all that.
Yeah.
It's neat. And the alien design is good. Probably borrows from the movie Alien and Aliens a fair bit.
Sure.
But the idea of sort of the bio exoskeleton is a neat one, and
Yeah.
it's kind of gross, but it's pretty cool. I have a few criticisms that I'll get to after I ask you about ID4,
Sure.
but I like the end part. This whole thing comes down to just uploading a virus to their. I think it's funny. I don't take this movie too seriously.
No.
And so for me, I think it works, and I could kind of see it, because they're kind of like us, and they have to have a way to communicate. So anyway, I'll get onto some of my criticisms, which are also kind of fun. But what are your
Sure.
thoughts about Independence Day?
Yeah, super fun, silly sci-fi. I watched this is another one I watch every year. Easily one of my favorite Roland Emmerich films.
Mhm.
Who's a German immigrant, very passionate about America. You can just see through his movies. He did this in The
Yeah, good
Patriot,
point.
and so
Right, yeah, that's one of my
he,
runners up on my list. Actually, The Patriot's a great
oh,
movie.
cool. Mine too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah.
good. And so, yeah, he does a great job with it. He very Spielbergian in a few of the choices he makes, I think,
Hmm.
here. And, it's all the better for it. I think the film is just grounded enough in characters that we like and some
Yeah.
real emotion. The president is probably my favorite character. I really like Will Smith's character and Jeff Goldblum's character. Judd Hirsch does a great job
Mhm.
in this movie as well. Very funny. But the president, he kind of goes through the ringer here. I mean,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
separated from his wife, and she ends up passing away, and it's a very emotional moment. But
Right.
Bill Pullman, I think, as the kind of leader, and yeah, that speech is just iconic. I mean, it's one of the great movie speeches, I think, just because of the kind of moment they place it in the movie, and the things he says and the reaction they give him is really good.
Yeah.
You mentioned the effects. The effects are great. I think they hold up pretty good for the most part. and yeah, just great one-liners.
Yeah, there's
You know,
a lot of humor in it.
there's a lot of humor that they inject into it, which is great. That,
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't take itself too seriously,
yeah,
which is important. But it still does have, you know, like I said, drama and some creepy moments. You know, I really
yeah,
do like the
yeah,
alien design, and
yeah,
they make Brett Spiner, they make him look so different. I think unless you're a
yeah.
really big Star Trek fan, you're not going to be able to tell
Right,
that that's
right.
Data, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, he's a ton of fun. He's a very, you know, different character from what he plays on
Hmm.
Next Generation. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they just do a great job overall. It's this big ensemble cast. It's really just well put together. Like you said, a
Mhm.
spectacle, very much a spectacle. One
Yeah,
of those that I
yeah,
would have really liked to have seen in the theater. Yeah, really enjoy it. Really enjoy that movie. It's really fun.
yeah. I got to get onto the criticisms though.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I must say, I probably have more criticisms in this film than most films
Okay.
that I would rate this high, because I give this probably at least 4 stars.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I gave it 3.5.
yeah,
I'm right up there.
so I just got to mention a few things. There's way too many coincidences in this.
Yes.
Like Will Smith's wife escapes that fiery ball, that fiery inferno, and she's driving this like beat down SUV through like this crazy like post-apocalyptic terrain, and it's
Sure.
smoky and everything.
Right.
And despite that, she comes across the president's wife.
Yes.
I mean, the odds of bumping into them in normal circumstances
Right.
are kind of out there, but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's obviously ridiculous. But
Sure.
um, and then also, you know, I like the idea that the ships are impenetrable, you know, due to the
Yeah, the
shields.
force fields. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, Goldblum's character figures out a way to crack that.
Sure.
What's funny though is that I like the tie-in that the U.S. has this Roswell incident, and they've had one of the ships, that,
Right.
you know, since the 50s,
Yeah.
and they fire it up and send it up there. And I this occurred to me while I'm rewatching it. I'm thinking, okay, so after from the 50s to 1996, they haven't changed the style of their ships at all. It's just like, oh, here comes another ship. Yeah,
Right.
it's a 36-year-old ship. So I thought that was kind of funny. But
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's just kind of
They
a little side
perfected
note.
it.
Yeah,
They were there.
exactly. No new models. Yeah, they're
Right.
all still working flawlessly. The CGI, there's and I do try to be critical. You know, there's
Sure.
several shots at toward the end of the movie where the big ships have crashed at various places around the world, and they show one shot, and I think there's like a bridge, and you see the ship sort of sideways in the water, I think, off in the distance, and it's on fire, one of the alien ships,
Yeah.
and it's huge, you know, and they had several of these like flashes of different parts of the world to
Right.
tie it in, and but I think it's maybe the last one, you see it and it's on fire, but nothing's moving, like they didn't animate it was just like a still, they literally put a still image in the movie.
Really?
Sorry.
Cutting corners, Emmerich.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick too, Will Smith is sort of a little less desirable than he used to be, in my opinion.
Sure.
He really kind of hurt his image with the Oscar thing, and it's a shame.
He did.
Like when he runs up and punches the alien in the ship, I couldn't help but
Right.
think of him hitting Chris Rock, you know.
Oh no.
Um,
Yes.
so anyway, those are just a few funny things or criticisms, but that's my
Right.
number. What are we on, number 3? That's my number 3.
Entertaining popcorn
Yeah.
movie for sure. Okay, so now we're jumping into our number 3 entries on our list. My number 3 pick is Rocky.
Oh,
So this movie came out in 1976, which was the bicentennial of America. And that plays into the plot. Rocky fights Apollo Creed on July 4th, on Independence Day.
oh,
Other reasons I, made this a top 5 patriotic film is because it's very much a quintessentially American underdog story.
yeah, yeah,
This kind of story, I don't think you can tell in any other country, really. That kind of, opportunity that knocks on Rocky's door that, he takes the 1 in a million shot. That's kind of one of those just very American ideas. The behind the scenes of this movie has been talked about elsewhere. I won't spend too much time on that, but it is itself an underdog story. Stallone, a kind of down and out actor, wasn't getting many roles, not the kind of roles he wanted, at least. He ended up selling the script only under the condition that he could star. And he had
I've heard that
basically
story. Yeah,
basically didn't have a penny to his name, and
yeah,
still would not sell this movie unless he was the main character. So just incredible fortitude it takes to make that kind of decision. The budget of the movie, only $1 million, shoestring budget. Even back in 76, that was nothing. Now it's like that's considered like an indie movie, basically.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and it ended up grossing 225 million. So the one of the highest profits of any movie in history. It ended up going on to get 9 Oscar nominations. It
Wow.
ended up winning Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Editing.
But he didn't win
Um,
actor, right?
he did not win actor. He did not
That's
win
crazy.
actor.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Burgess Meredith was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but he unfortunately didn't win either. John G. Avildsen did a great job directing the film. He's another one of these guys that I was watching. They have this whole documentary on this Blu-ray set I have of all the Rocky movies. A 3-part documentary over an hour long where they talk about the making of the first Rocky movie. And he was another one of these kind of visionary directors who very much had an idea in his head of what he wanted the movie to be. And he said it was all kind of there in the script, though. I mean, it was a really well written script. Yeah. The script is what got him on board. It's what got the entire cast on board. It's what sold the movie. So, and the script was written by Sylvester Stallone. He wrote it for himself. He very much was kind of thinking about the kind of movie he wanted to see, the kind of character he wanted to play. He's a very intelligent guy, Stallone. You probably wouldn't guess from the kind of roles he plays or just kind of the way he talks, the way he presents himself as a very down to earth kind of guy. He's really, really a smart guy. And the cast is mostly unknown actors. He wasn't very well known at the time. Neither was Talia Shire or Burt Young. Carl Weathers even wasn't, a big movie star by any means. Burgess Meredith was by far the most well-known actor in the film. He's the one that kind of gave it that weight. Kind of reminds me of Star Wars, Alec Guinness taking on the Obi-Wan role, classically trained theater actor, coming into this kind of small movie, this kind of unknown property. And they all do a great job. They were all kind of hungry for roles at this point, and they very much connected, each of them connected with their characters on some level. But Stallone himself, he's playing this role of kind of a very simple, kind of dumb guy. We actually find out in Rocky 2 that he's illiterate. And so he's not a very smart guy, but he has a very strong sense of morality, of fairness, of justice. He's kind of gotten caught up in the wrong crowd. He's kind of working for this loan shark as kind of this leg breaker.
Oh,
and
really?
At the beginning of the movie, he's told to break this guy's thumbs, and he doesn't do it because he knows it's wrong. And so he's not very good at his job. But then he's also boxing, of course, underground during the opening minutes of the movie. And you see that, and you see this kind of violence brewing under the surface when he's in the ring. Mm-hmm. He's kind of letting this rage out, this rage that he has against society, his place in society, where he is in his life. You can tell he's kind of disillusioned. He doesn't like where he is. And you see that come out when he's fighting. The screenplay is really interesting because learning how to write movies, they always tell you that the inciting incident that kind of kicks off the main plot should happen by page 15. If it happens any later in your movie, you're boring your audience. You're not getting to, what's important quick enough. Well, the inciting incident in this film doesn't happen until page 55.
Wow.
It's well into the movie that he actually gets the chance to fight Apollo Creed. And the reason it works here is because the opening, almost hour of the movie is all character centric. It's all us getting to know Rocky, getting to know Paulie and Adrian and Mickey and Apollo. It's kind of small cast, but we're getting to know each of them very well. We're getting to know who they are, where they are in their lives, where they are in relationship to one another. And they just do a great job of, setting all that up. It was shot in only 28 days, all of it on location in Philadelphia, a little bit of it in Los Angeles as well. But the vast majority of it was shot in Philadelphia. And there were a lot of improv where they were kind of shooting nights mostly because that's when they were kind of allowed to shoot on the streets. And a lot of it just by happenstance, for instance, the skating scene, Adrian and Rocky's first date. They just happened to find, hey, there's a skating rink here. Maybe they can have their first date here. Walked in, happened to be able to shoot there. No one was there at that time of night. Certain lines of dialogue when Adrian is in Rocky's apartment and she said, "I need to tell my brother where I am." And Rocky peeks his head out the window and says, "Hey, Paulie, Adrian, your sister's with me." That was all improvised by Stallone on the spot. So a lot of cool kind of accidents that kind of happened, or improvisational moments that make the movie, I think, so much more authentic. So they do a great job with this movie. Kind of a combination. You think of Rocky, you usually think of a sports film, a boxing movie, but this movie, to me, I mean, there's very little boxing in it. Rewatching it's really a romantic comedy, I think. I mean, more than anything, it really has this great sense of humor, and again, all character centric comedy. It's very much a love story between Rocky and Adrian. She's introduced very early in the film, very shy, not talkative.
Yeah.
And through her interactions with Rocky, and through kind of his coming into her life in this way, she gains a lot of agency. She kind of stands up to her brother Paulie, who's very much a bully to her, and those are great scenes with those characters that I really, really like. Of course, there's that great training montage, which has become iconic. Training in the meat locker, the whole thing.
Oh,
just so many great iconic moments in this movie that work out so well. In the fight, you've seen this movie, right?
no.
You have not seen this. Oh wow!
No.
I was about to
No,
spoil it. I'm glad you I
Yeah,
masked that
if
because
there
I
was
was
a massive spoiler.
I was
yeah.
about to get into the end of the movie, which is,
And it's one I would like to watch.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of the Rocky movies, but
oh really?
I mean, I know of like the scene where he like runs up the stairs and
Yes.
does like this or something.
Right. Yeah.
And like I think I've caught a few minutes on television like years
Okay.
and years ago.
Okay.
Because I remember him and Talia Shire.
Sure.
They're smooching or something.
Right.
He takes off her glasses.
Yes. That's in
yeah.
this movie. Yep. That's their first
Yeah.
date. Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You've got to watch it then. I'm glad I didn't get into the ending, because the ending it's so important, but I won't get into it because I want you to watch it. But there is the end of the movie is the fight between Rocky and Apollo.
Oh, okay.
And Apollo comes out dressed as George Washington. He makes this big show because, again, it's on Independence Day. And
kind of like in Rocky 4.
Kind of like in Rocky 4. Yeah. Apollo is known for wearing the red, white, and blue trunks. That's
he's probably is his nickname after the NASA shuttle launch.
Could be
Apollo.
Could be.
I don't know if they ever say that, but I wonder.
They don't ever say that he's ever just called Apollo. That's just his. I think that's just his first name. I don't know if it's
his name. I
don't
thought it was
think
a nickname.
I don't think it's a nickname. They don't ever mention it as a nickname.
Gotcha.
So
I guess it'd be a weird nickname, but
it would be a little weird. But yeah. Anyways, great movie. Philadelphia is highlighted. Philadelphia was considered to be the U.S. capital before they made it Washington, D.C. It's kind of the heart of America, Independence Hall, where they signed the Declaration, and
right.
Betsy Ross's house is there. The church where Betsy Ross and George Washington attended is there. I've had the opportunity to visit all these places.
Oh, have you?
I have. I've been to Philadelphia many years ago, but I vividly remember it, and seeing the Liberty Bell, and I did run up the Rocky Steps. And
isn't there a statue there of him?
There wasn't when I went. I don't know if I know they had it up for a while. They took it down. I don't know if it's back up now or not. But yeah, there was an actual statue of Rocky there.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. I highly recommend it. Again, that kind of underdog spirit runs throughout it. And Bill Conti's music, I will also mention, which has become iconic. Dun da da dun da da dun da da dun.
Yeah, that's great music.
Great music. So this movie's so inspiring. If you ever want to be inspired for anything in your life, no matter what you're doing, this is the movie to watch.
I need to put that up on my watch list because I do. I almost went back and watched. I haven't seen some of the newer spinoffs.
Yeah, Creed. Yeah, Creed is great. Yeah,
is it? Yeah, I almost started watching those, and I didn't get to them. But I love Rocky 4, and I think I've seen 3, but I don't really remember it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Creed 3 is coming out this year.
Oh, okay.
So before it comes out, you should rewatch all the Rockies and the Creeds.
I probably should. Yeah,
and that way we can
almost none of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do a podcast about that sounds good. The whole franchise before
I'd
the
like
third.
that because I Yeah, I like what I've
Yeah.
seen of it. I just haven't committed the time to going back and watching them.
Yeah. Yeah. You should check it out. That's a good one. All right. That's our number threes. Now we're on to our number twos. What's your number two, Bert?
My number two, you know, I love the big popcorn action kind of big budget movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to veer too far from that in this
Sure.
list. My number two is Armageddon.
Oh, great one. Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, obviously, it's a super fun action film.
yep.
Loads of humor, you know, in this film. You're
Yes.
just laughing throughout.
Right.
Every once in a while, there's a joke or something that doesn't quite land, but
Sure.
and it does actually. The film actually does have some heart. You know,
Yeah.
this is kind of like my last movie. You know, it's mostly good CGI. You know,
Sure.
it's not all you know, it's not flawless. It's not
Right.
perfect. And we know they can make it better because we've seen Jurassic Park. But it's mostly good CGI. The cast, there's so many characters in it and great. I don't even know if you call them comedians, but they're so funny. You
Right.
know, this is kind of the fictional Apollo 13 film, I
Right.
guess you could say. I mean, it's got
Sure.
nothing to do with going to the moon, but you know,
Right.
to sort of contrast with the actual, you know, real life events of Apollo 13. This is
Yeah.
there's a lot of similar stuff, you know, going up in the shuttle and that kind of thing. The premise of this film to me does, I feel like it does seem possible. I mean, if I've heard about this idea of, you know, if an asteroid was big enough and hit us, we'd be done and that kind of thing. It's
Right.
not just from this film. I mean, it's been talked about before
Sure.
this film and
Sure.
since this. And
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of wondering, like, what is our plan? You know, if we have we worked on that? Is
Yeah.
this the plan? You know, because
Right.
what else are we gonna do? You know, I
Right.
mean, you know, maybe a higher tech version, maybe we blast it with some lasers. I don't know,
Right.
but
Musk needs to get us to Mars quick.
yeah, I mean, so that has occurred to me, like, wait, what is our plan when this
Yeah.
happens? You know, so I don't know what that is.
Right.
Michael Bay, goodness, I watch probably every one of his movies, and there's some that are just absolutely terrific. I would put this on that list. I would put The Rock on that list. There's probably a couple others. I like a couple of the Transformers films,
Yeah.
but most Michael Bay movies are not great, and I have
Right.
my own criticisms. But it's really great here. He's another one that does like to work closely with the actual military. You know, gets permission to film where you know most of the time you can't go. I have watched in years past a lot of the behind the scenes material, but I've forgotten a lot of it. But I know that he did get a lot of cooperation with the military, and NASA, and got access to things that you don't normally get to see, much less film. So he does try for that authenticity, and you can kind of feel it in this movie. But and then again, we've got another film like my last one where there's this major cataclysmic event that's happening or going to happen, and the US is the one that has to step up. You know,
Right.
no other country is going to do it. So,
Yeah.
and that could be accurate. I mean, we're called a superpower or whatever, and it's, you know,
Sure.
it's you know, and then that with that, you know, comes a lot of responsibility.
Sure.
So, and that is to step in real life, you know, when things happen around the world. America does that when they choose to, when we choose to. So just a few things about this. Trevor Rabin's score is really moving. It's really good here. From what I understand, Hans Zimmer helped him out with the score.
Mm.
It sounds like a Hans Zimmer score, you know.
Yeah.
And I think at a certain point, Hans Zimmer had this not like a ranch, but like a studio where there were like several composers that worked on, sort of underneath his umbrella. Trevor Rabin's one of them. John Powell's one of them. I can name a bunch of others if I sat and thought through. But
Yeah.
anyway, the score is very good here. The cast, I mean, there's so many funny actors, as I said. Harry Stormar from Jurassic Park 3 is
Right.
here, and I think this is it's the best role I've seen him in. He's, you
Yeah.
know, I feel I'm having gravity. You know, he's that guy. He's hilarious, and he's not Russian, but he's so funny in this
Right.
movie. The brief time he's in it.
Yeah.
Bill Fichtner is great here. You know, he's
Like him a
get
lot.
off the nuclear warhead. You know, he's
Yeah.
that guy.
Right.
And then Bashimi, you know, is he's got so many funny lines, and
Great.
it, you know, come on, we're staying, we're going, what are we doing? You know,
Right.
I mean, and then there's other actors too. I mean, we could just go on and on. There's so many one-liners. I mean, it's a super fun film. It's not perfect. I have a couple little criticisms that I'll throw out. The rewatchability is way up there, and it still mostly holds up with the effects. And it's just a great, fun movie that I could pop in at any time and rewatch.
Yeah.
So it's my
Yeah.
number two.
Yeah, I agree. It's really fun, super big budget blockbuster filmmaking, which Bay, like you said, sometimes hits it out of the park and sometimes just falls totally flat.
Yeah,
I agree
yeah,
with you. The Rock is probably my favorite of his.
yeah, probably.
It's
Yeah, it's
great.
great.
I did like the first Transformers movie quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, he's hit or miss, but this one's a hit for sure because he does a good job with all the characters balancing this big cast, which is
Yeah,
a
it is a
difficult
big
thing to
cast.
get to
Yeah.
do, and gives them all moments to shine for sure. Bruce Willis, of course, a great leading man. He's proven himself time and time again. Ben Affleck, kind of a rising star, I guess, at this time.
Hmm.
Does a good job.
Yeah, he
Liv
does.
Liv Tyler as well. Got that great her dad singing in the background, Aerosmith, which is fun. So yeah, I really like this one too. Yeah, great effects and is a ton of fun to watch. I only actually saw this one fairly recently. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago for the first time.
Really?
Yeah, it was one
Wow.
that I kind of one of my blind spots that I just hadn't seen. So
Yeah, yeah.
watched it with my wife and we both really enjoyed it. I'll mention one of my criticisms, I guess. It's kind of just funny. I don't know if it's one of yours or not, but why didn't they just train astronauts to be oil drillers instead of training oil drillers to be astronauts? And I think Ben
Exactly.
Affleck asked Michael Bay this, and he told him
Oh,
to shut.
really?
Yeah, he just told him to
Oh,
shut
oh.
up.
That's funny. Yeah, certainly that might be it's a more feasible solution. Yeah.
Right.
Right, right. Yeah,
But I
that's a
love
good
the
point.
blue collar nature of the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
think that's very Americana.
right, right. Yeah, and exactly. And Bruce Willis, he's an underrated actor, I think.
Definitely.
And a lot of his humor is his reactions as kind of the straight man.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
he gets a lot of chuckles out of me just by his smirks and
Yes.
bouncing off other people. He's a
Right.
great comedian. He started out in in the show Moonlighting, and he
That's
was super
true.
funny in that.
And he's hilarious in
Um,
Die Hard too. So it
yeah,
shouldn't be a
yeah,
surprise, but he
exactly.
did play a lot more stoic roles, I think,
He has,
maybe in
yeah.
between. And yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. So just a couple things here. There's a moment, it's actually at the 1 hour and 58 and 30-second mark in the film that I don't know if anybody's, if anybody listens to this and wants to look out for this when they watch the movie. It's very strange, but this bothered me for the longest time on this film. I mentioned Trevor Rabin's score, which is really good. There's a point, it's right when the character Max flies out into space, and I think he flies out to space and he's lost and they know he's not coming back. But the music, for some reason, slows down, and I feel like it's a glitch. And anyway, I just, if you ever, someone's ever rewatching it and wants to listen for that, I
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't really affect anything at all, but I just, every time I watch it, I'm waiting for that part, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, this is the part where the music kind of messes up. It's so strange
Weird.
because especially in a polished Hollywood film, you
Yeah.
don't get that a whole lot,
Or you'd
especially where
think
it's
they would fix it on
noticeable.
home video at least if they.
Right. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just hearing
Hmm.
it that way, but it's always, I guess you could say, bothered me. The other thing though is, I'm going to fire a little bit of a shot at Liv Tyler. I'm not really a fan of her acting, and I feel bad saying something bad. She could watch this for all we know. Um, uh,
Sorry, Liv. I don't feel the same way.
she's probably gotten better, but the scenes with her and Ben Affleck in this movie are probably my least favorites.
Okay.
Sometimes she's good in the film, but just
Yeah.
sometimes her reactions are just not, they're
Right.
not good. Like, they're not there. Her
Right.
acting just really takes, I mean, it honestly knocks a few, not a few points, but
Right.
I mean, I give this film probably at least 4, if not 4.5 stars. So that's where
Yeah.
I'm at. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, there's other funny things, criticisms I could have, but I just thought I'd
Sure.
throw those couple things out there. Yeah.
Sure.
That's my
Yeah, I
number
hear
2.
you. It's good. It's a good pick. Good pick for your number two. Yeah, I like it too. It's a fun movie for sure. My number two pick is Forrest Gump.
Hmm.
So
Good one.
Forrest Gump is just, I mean, it's American history. It's the second half of the 20th century
Mhm.
through this character's eyes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Right.
it's really a phenomenal movie. One of those that just it has it all. It has romance, it has drama, it has comedy, has action, spectacular effects, groundbreaking effects that had never been seen before.
Right. Yeah.
Award-winning cast of just all stars, and an all-star behind the camera, Robert Zemeckis. I mean, just one of the best. What
Yeah,
can you
he's
say? I
great.
mean, he's
Yeah.
so good. He's so good, and had such a great time last night. I got to watch this with the commentary on.
Oh,
Zemeckis was
yeah.
on it with a couple of the producers. So much they covered. With the movie, behind the scenes movie making, choices they made, from cinematography to music to all of it. It was really fascinating to listen to. This movie released July 6th, 1994, so right around Independence Day. It's 2 hours and 22 minutes long, had a $55 million budget, which seems quaint. Again, nowadays, a movie like this would cost
Yeah.
at least $100 million. Ended up grossing $678 million. This was a huge hit.
It's a
Also,
universally liked film, that's for sure.
it
Yeah.
really is, and for good reason. Oscars, it won 6 Oscars: Best Picture, Actor, Director, Effects, Screenplay, Editing. It won all those at the Academy Awards, and it was well deserved. It's based on a book by a guy named Winston Groom. Funnily enough, Zemeckis never read the book. He
He just
based
read the screenplay.
he just read the screenplay. Eric
Gotcha.
Roth
Gotcha.
wrote the screenplay and did a great job, and he based all of it on his writing. It's coming on the heels of Zemeckis already having hits in *Romancing the Stone*, *Back to the Future*, *Who Framed Roger Rabbit*,
Mhm.
and *Death Becomes Her*.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of all those movies.
Speaking of Bruce
Huge
Willis.
fan
Yeah.
of all that, and all of those movies have groundbreaking effects
Yeah.
and
Right.
just,
Right.
again, super
That's true.
talented casts. They're just excellent all around. One of the most interesting things I found was, a lot of times when people make movies, they'll do rehearsals beforehand before they actually start shooting. This movie had a lot of rehearsals. I think they said about 6 weeks they took
Because
to
of the
rehearse.
effects they had to work in.
No, this is all the rehearsals was it was Zemeckis, Eric Roth, the screenwriter, and the cast sitting in a room going over the screenplay.
Oh,
That's all it was. They just wanted to work out their characters. They wanted to work out the dialogue. They wanted
yeah.
ideas from the cast on how they felt about the characters, what the characters should say in the situation.
Huh.
I mean, it was an in-depth rehearsal process of just getting to know who these people were, basically. So,
Yeah.
it's shot. You can tell in the movie because they're all so engrossed in these characters. I don't see Tom Hanks on screen when I watch Forrest
Right.
Gump. I
Right.
don't see Robin Wright. I don't see Gary Sinise or Sally Field. I just see these characters that they're playing 100%.
Yeah.
They're totally committed. And it's interesting. They talked about how each member of the cast, each character, is reflective of a certain aspect of America. So Sally Field as Mama, she's the kind of classic old school American folk wisdom, classic morality, though not without sin. She does some things that aren't right here, but she kind of represents that whole kind of idea of America. Then you have Ginny, who is very much this abused youth who kind of searches for meaning in life. Joins the hippie movement and these other political movements throughout the film that we see her in and involved in, as she's kind of seeking meaning through all of these drugs and whatever else it is. And then you have Lieutenant Dan, who kind of represents the military legacy family. We see that great montage of all of his ancestors dying in every American war,
Mm.
and he thinks that's his destiny, and he's doing whatever it takes to fulfill that destiny. And he's ends up being a warrior who finds peace. His destiny is not what he thought it was going to be. And Jenny is very much the same way. She kind of leaves home wanting to leave it all behind, but ends up back there because her home is with Forrest, and she kind of has that lesson that she learns throughout it. So just great characterization all around from the actors. Just the way it's shot is phenomenal. The way he moves the camera, these long, big, sweeping shots of the American kind of landscape. We kind of get to travel all across the country in this movie, not just showcasing the South, but the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And when he goes on his run, you get to see kind of the American West and all of these different places. It's just an incredible looking movie. They do a great job with that. The score, of course, is fantastic. It's so well done.
Who did the score in
Um,
that one?
it's Silvestri, Alan Silvestri, who
Oh,
did
okay.
most of
Yeah.
Zemeckis's
Yeah.
films.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, he has a great theme in there that's
Mm,
heard throughout. And the music is so interesting the way it's used in this film, because you have the Silvestri stuff, which Zemeckis said he used for all the character moments, right?
mm,
And then you have the soundtrack, lets us know what time era we're in. And I
yeah.
mean, just all the best. I mean, from Elvis to Creedence Clearwater Revival, Aretha Franklin is heard in there. Bob Dylan, Beach Boys, The Doors, Simon and Garfunkel, Willie Nelson, Leonard Skinner, Fleetwood Mac. I mean, just so many great American bands are heard throughout this film, and they use each of those songs very well. Not only to let us know what time era we're in, but to connect with what's going on in whatever scene you're hearing them in. And another thing Zemeckis did that was interesting was he used them as if there's a radio in the scene. So you're not going to
Hmm.
see, out in the middle of nowhere, a song come on randomly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
even when they
Right.
land in Vietnam, you're hearing the song as they're in the helicopter landing on,
Ah,
kind
I
of the
like that.
base.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's as if there's a radio sitting kind of just off camera somewhere.
Yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
clever way of doing it.
Yeah.
Hanks, to get the voice of Forrest Gump, he actually emulated the young actor named Michael Humphreys, who plays young Forrest. So this was his natural accent.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of making the kid do Tom Hanks' voice, Tom Hanks just
That's
emulated
smart.
him,
Yeah.
which was very smart of Hanks to do as an actor. That was his idea, and he does a great job. It's of course an iconic voice now. This movie, it does everything right, I think, on basically every level. It's so well paced. The story, of this kind of simple man, some would call stupid. Stupid is as stupid does, and he doesn't do anything stupid in this movie. That phrase, I think that's kind of what that means. I don't really know if they know what it means, even in the film, but to me, that's what it means. It's Forrest is he has a very low IQ, right? We get that scene in the beginning where he's below average on his IQ level, but he never
Yeah.
does anything specifically that's you would consider to be stupid. He very
That's a
much
good
makes
point.
decisions based on his conscience, and he just follows
Mhm.
his conscience throughout this film. Kind of reminds me of Pinocchio in an odd way. He lets his conscience be his guide throughout this entire film. Whatever happens to him, he's always doing what's right. But the whole idea of the movie is that anyone can accomplish anything. He gets to meet all these presidents. He gets to Watergate. He was there. I
Right.
mean, all of it. It's all
Yeah.
there. I taught Elvis how to dance.
Yeah.
All these great things that they did with this character.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
just so interesting. And he's apolitical too. He
Hmm.
doesn't have any party loyalty. This is
Yeah.
movie kind of abstractly about politics, but character wise, it's really not. It really doesn't take a stance on the
Yeah.
issues necessarily. It's kind of the purest representation of America. Zemeckis said Gump is all about mom, God, and apple pie. And that's, I think, an apt way to describe the character. He's
Yeah. Yeah.
also ends up becoming an entrepreneur, with Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. And
Hmm.
Michael T. Williamson, I'll mention as well, plays Bubba Gump, does a great job as Bubba
Yeah.
in that role, such an important role. But yeah, the character, he's just endearing. He's not prejudiced, he's not cynical, he's just earnest and he's honest in every
Mhm.
scene throughout this film. The whole framing of the film from the narration, they actually filmed that, and we see it flashed back throughout of him sitting on this park bench.
Mhm.
The original idea was we'll just do a voiceover and that'll be that. But Zemeckis had the idea of no, we need to film it that way. Tom Hanks is going to perform more if he's on camera, and he's very much performing, relaying the story to these various people who come and sit on this
Yeah.
park bench, which is
Right.
a great way to frame it. So, Zemeckis says all great movies blend human truth with spectacle.
Mm.
And that's what this movie does. It's just, a very true, honest film, full of spectacle. We mentioned the special effects are just incredible,
Yeah.
inserting them into these incredible sequences, real archive footage, and yeah, do a great job with that. So yeah, I could go on and on about Forrest Gump. It's a great film. What are your thoughts on it?
It is a great film. I wouldn't say I give it 5 stars. It's
Okay.
one of those that I thoroughly enjoy when I'm watching. I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Yeah.
Everybody, loves the film for the most
Yeah.
part.
Right.
I felt like it was. I feel like it's a little bit too long. I think it's 2 hours plus, isn't
It
it?
is 2 hours,
Um,
22 minutes.
and not that it has to be under 2 hours to be enjoyed. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, some things about it were that I felt like it was a little bit too long.
Mm.
And uh, I'm not trying to pick on actresses today, but I didn't love Robin Wright in that
Oh,
role
okay.
for some reason. I
Interesting.
didn't really know who she was, and I didn't really
Mm.
feel like she was. I don't know if it was her acting. I just had a hard time buying her as this sort of object of affection
Mm.
that Forrest so idolized from childhood. You know what I mean? I don't know
Right.
why. I haven't seen
Okay.
the film in many years, so it's probably unfair to rate it at this point. But
Sure.
I
Sure.
mean, I probably would still say it was 4 stars, but I
Yeah.
don't think I felt like it was a 5 star film for me.
Gotcha.
But it is thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah, I mean Zemeckis is, he almost always hits,
Yeah. He
and Tom
does.
Hanks really crafted a just an iconic character, and it was so interwoven into the fabric of the current day. I mean, everyone was quoting this film.
Right.
Um,
Right.
the stupid as the stupid does. The Run Forest Run. I mean,
Yeah.
I've probably heard various people say that
Right.
dozens and dozens of times, but
Sure.
there's so many lines like that in this film that
Yeah.
came through, and so everybody was going to see this film when it came out,
Right. Right.
and was talking about it. Um, Gary Sinise was
Mm.
really great in this film too,
Great.
and so those are my thoughts. But it's probably been 15 years since I've seen it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you should give it a rewatch. It's really good. Yeah,
Hmm.
Gary Sinise, the digital removal of his legs
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
incredible.
Right.
A couple
Right.
you can't tell at all. I mean, there are actually
Yeah.
people. Robert Zemeckis had come up to him and say, "So how did you put legs on that guy who didn't have legs at the beginning?" He's like, "No, we took the legs off." So
That's great.
that's the
That's when
greatest
it's
compliment.
succeeding.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
wasn't this the same year as Jurassic Park, 93?
this was year after 94. Yeah.
Okay. So is that was CGI, was it?
It was CGI. Yeah. Yeah. They
So right
digitally removed
away,
him. Well, in
yeah,
some
that's just.
scenes, when he's in the
Mhm.
wheelchair, they invented a wheelchair where he could tuck his legs under.
Oh,
So they
okay.
used all kinds of methods, but several scenes
Okay.
it was digital.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the directors that conservatively use CGI
Yep.
and you don't notice it or can't figure out how they did it. That's when it's
Yes.
most successful. And
Right.
Zemeckis is great at that.
He is. He is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked his line about how great movies blend truth and spectacle. And you have to
Mhm.
have both because
Mhm.
if it's all spectacle, as we've seen with the director we just talked about, Michael Bay, I think he can focus on that a little too much sometimes. But a movie like
Yeah.
Armageddon has that truth of the human story of the
Mhm.
characters that you can care about and latch
Right.
onto, which is an element that you have to have. The last thing I'll mention, another iconic line, you were mentioning iconic lines, is life is like a box of chocolate. You
Yeah.
never know
Yeah.
what you're going to get. And I just think
Right.
that's another thing that kind of sums up this. It's kind of an epic story, which is why I think the runtime needs to be as long as it is, because it is, they're telling this guy's life. I think the year was 1956 is when it begins. It ends in
Mm,
1981. So it's
yeah.
many, several decades that we're covering of this man's life and American history and his
Mhm.
involvement in it. There's this recurring motif of this feather, which the movie opens with
Yeah.
this
Right.
feather,
Right.
which kind of represents both the randomness of seeming randomness of life and the predestination of life, of our destinies that we all have to fulfill. So it's
Yeah.
that balance that I think is really interesting. The feather could land anywhere, but it lands on Forrest, and we
Right.
follow his journey as he kind of does all these incredible things. So many funny moments too. I mean,
Yeah.
his interactions with presidents,
Hmm. Shaking
JFK
hands.
and
And, yeah.
Johnson and all
Yeah.
of it. It's so well done.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
very
it's one of
creative.
those, again, yeah, very creative, balances all the elements really well. All the genres kind of switches back and forth
Right.
between comedy, drama, romance. It is
Yeah.
all in there and it all works really well.
Yeah. It's a good
So,
pick.
all right. So those were our number two picks for our top five patriotic movies. Now we're on to our number ones. So Bert's going to kick us off. What is your number one patriotic film?
All right. I'm pretty excited about this one. My number one is National Treasure.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All
Rewatched
right.
this one again and thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Cool.
I mean, it's got everything that I like. It's got like a lot of adventure, a lot of humor, action. It's even got a heist, like a whole section that's just kind of
Right.
like a heist section.
Yeah.
It covers different time periods. You know, there, at the
Mm,
beginning there's like a flashback, and then it has all kinds of different locales that it goes to, which I always appreciate. And they actually did go film at those places. They didn't just green screen it or something, you know.
right.
But
Right.
they so you've got like early 1800s England. You've got out in the middle of Alaska or something, which I found
Right.
out watching behind the scenes. The snowy part near the beginning is actually in Utah, which so must be up in the mountains.
Okay.
Is where they filmed it. And
Yeah.
then of course you got all the famous places like they go the Washington Monument, the National Archives. You got
Hmm.
Philly. There's
Right.
New York, like the Manhattan's in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Downtown DC is in there. And even the Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan, but they don't actually. I don't think they actually show the church. I think they switched to a set. They
Mm.
avoid actually showing out the exterior of the church, which
Uh-huh.
that church is really famous, and a lot of famous people were buried there. And it's right
Sure.
by sort of ground zero and that kind of thing in Lower Manhattan.
Okay.
So it's right by the Freedom Tower. But that's a famous church. That place was the church was itself was a shelter for people that were fleeing the towers when they fell and that
Oh,
kind of thing.
wow. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of more behind that too. But so anyway, I just love all the different locales. Location shooting is I feel like some movies get bogged down with only using sets, and you can tell they're just sets. So I like the sort of liberating, of getting out and shooting in real world
Yeah.
places and that kind of thing.
Right. Right.
And this National Treasure has so many I mean, big hitters, I guess is the way to say it. You got, obviously Nicolas Cage, but John Voight plays his dad. Christopher Plummer plays his dad.
Right. Right.
It's like a 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah.
Uh, and Harvey Keitel is, he's the sort of the lead. I guess he's the FBI,
Oh, yeah.
lead
Yeah.
FBI guy.
Right.
Um, a guy named Justin Bartha plays sort of the sidekick to Nicolas Cage, and I think he's
Right.
hilarious throughout.
Right. Yeah.
I could see where maybe some people think that he's not funny, but I think he's hilarious.
Yeah.
And most of he gives a lot of comedic relief throughout
Sure.
the film.
Sure.
And Sean Bean, he's one of my favorite actors. He's great here, although he just kind of plays sort of a little bit of a generic bad guy, and he's kind of nice and smiles sometimes. And
Right.
there's nothing really too menacing. That you don't
Sure.
ever really feel like anybody's gonna die in this movie,
Right. Right.
So,
Sure.
and that's fine. It's just a fun adventure movie.
Yeah.
I like things like they find they're going through something and find like a box, and then they open it up and it's like, oh, what's in that box, and then they
Right.
like at one point they find like this old pipe and it's like, ooh, I wonder what that does. I know it just gets my mind kind of going into these like into adventure mode. I
Right.
like that kind of thing. And seeing them solve all these clues, like they're connecting, like, okay, here's the clue, and that leads us to this, or they'll say this means this, which could mean this and this. Like you can kind of hear the thought process. Like all these
Yeah.
things are like way smarter than I purport to be. But I like to watch the
Right.
characters kind of go through that chain, sort
Yeah.
of out loud and trying to find the next clue.
Right.
To me, it's fun. The film actually has a great score. Trevor Rabin does the score for it, and
Okay.
it's funny because there's some beautiful sort of stringed parts that sound very Hans Zimmery, and
Mm.
Trevor Rabin is one of the ones that's been on staff with Hans Zimmer in the
Okay.
past, I believe. But also it has a really kind of Born Identity vibe, and John Powell did the Born, I think the series, most of the movies, and it
Right.
sounds very much like Born at
Mm.
certain places, which is I mean, it's a good thing because that's the like the real peppy part, and it's kind of more synthesized and electronic. So it's got a little bit of the best of both in the score. It's a very memorable score as well.
Yeah.
Um, National Treasure is strange in that there's almost no bad language whatsoever, and it is a Disney film, but that doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's exempt from bad language. But I
Sure.
just I noticed that maybe on the second time I watched it, I'm like, there's like no. And Nicolas Cage, loves to swear for the most
Sure.
part, and it had to be a specific decision because I mean, it's Nicolas Cage. He's probably gonna
Yeah.
say, "Well, how about I just say it this way and include the more colorful language.
Right.
I don't know, but I mean, it's something that I can watch with my kids in the room, which is another
Yeah.
plus,
Right.
because
Right.
I've said this before. It's not like I really care that much about most of the language, but if I can watch it with my younger kids around and they're not going to be like, oh, we don't say that, then
Yeah.
that's another big plus. So yeah,
Sure.
and
Sure.
interestingly enough, the sequel's the same way. There's like no bad language in it basically. So
Right.
it's pretty rare. It sticks out, I guess, is why I pointed
Sure.
out.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and National Treasure, I really like the fact that it celebrates our history, and I feel like in the current era, especially, um, I feel like some of our forefathers are getting sort of indicted, um, long after their passing. And this film kind of emphasizes the good, and our history and our founding fathers, and makes you feel really good about our country's origin, and gives me a sense of pride of like revisiting some of these things. And I don't really think of a lot of films that sort of go back and show you the places that like the Declaration of Independence was signed, and it's exciting, and
Right.
you know what I mean? Like they really kind of get you
Yeah.
sort of energized about our history.
Yeah.
And so I really like those aspects of it.
Yeah.
The Declaration of Independence itself is kind of a character here.
Right.
It's the focus of the heist scene, and then at
Yeah.
one point it's like spilling out into the street and almost gets run over by a couple cars. It's almost like they're trying to save a child or something. They're like, no, trying to save, which I completely get it. And again,
Right.
it's nice that they revere it enough and show it the
Yeah.
respect.
Sure.
Even the bad guy, Sean Bean, even he, I think at one point hands it back because he's like, okay, I'm done with it. I mean, he even knows
Right.
like you might want to put
Yeah.
that somewhere
That's important.
important.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The action of the film is kind of basic but entertaining, if that makes sense. They don't really go the CGI routes. I did watch some behind the scenes. I was surprised how much CGI they actually do use, or at least compositing miniatures even. So it
Mm.
makes sense. But there's more of that stuff going on. And I said before, that's always a good sign of the use of special effects in the right way, is if you just assume it was all practical and then
Yep.
it's like, oh, they did a miniature, or this was actually a CGI enhanced, or, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so that's very invisible.
Yeah.
The director is John Turteltaub.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yep.
seen a couple of his other movies. He was more popular in the 90s.
Yeah.
The film does a good job of it at times it can come across as oh well, the lead character he's just out to get rich off of this stuff, off of this fortune, or this treasure that may have some significance in history,
Sure.
and so yeah, that's kind of up in the air. Like, sometimes some of the characters will make a remark about, oh, that money, or like that
Mm.
one of the little trinkets they find. One of the characters remarks that, oh, is it worth $1 million or something like that? And so you kind of think that maybe that's the point of it. But then at the end, we find out that he actually gives the treasure. He donates the treasure um, back to America, or museums. They don't have to say
Right.
what, they give it to the
Yeah.
FBI. So
Yeah.
he's not keeping it.
Right.
He's very noble.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very careful, to make sure that they make all the right moves so that you appreciate the character, and you think that, oh, he's not just looking to become a billionaire overnight. And then
Right.
of course, then at the very, very end, you find out that he got to keep a 0.5% of the value of the money. So he also did become a million. It's kind of weird like that.
Right.
But as long as his character is not assassinated, and you think he's just always above board, and always thinking
Yeah.
for the greater good, not selfishly. So
Sure.
it kind of walks a fine line in that. But yeah, it's a great movie, a great adventure film. It's the kind of movie I like. I haven't reviewed it yet, but it's probably 5 stars.
Okay.
And the romance in the film is a little questionable. That's the only criticism I have. But but anyway, it's just thoroughly enjoyable from start to finish. What about you with National Treasure?
So yeah, we're on different sides here. This is a divide for us because I'm not a big fan of National Treasure.
Mm,
I don't find it particularly exciting or compelling in
mm,
any major way. I feel like it's a kind of Disney ripoff of Indiana Jones. Maybe
Sure.
because I'm
Yeah.
such a big Indiana Jones fan and
Yeah.
have grown up
Yeah.
watching those movies, and for
Right.
that could be very well play into it. I'm sure it does
Sure.
because this very much does borrow from
Yeah.
Indy in many ways, as
Definitely.
does
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like Mummy. But Mummy, I feel
Right.
is unique enough to where I don't feel like it's ripping it off. I'm a huge fan of the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, the one from
I like
'99.
that movie. Yeah. Yeah.
National Treasure. Honestly, it's been a while since I've watched it, and it was one of those movies that when it came out, I think I was a teenager at that point. I think it was like '03, somewhere around there,
Four. Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
'04. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I would have been like 12, 13, and everyone was all of my friends were huge into this movie. I mean, they thought it was the greatest movie they had ever seen.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's because many of them did not grow up with the movies I grew up with.
Gotcha.
That's the only
Yeah.
thing I can think of is they were like, "This is the great. I've never seen anything like this," and I'm like, "This is just a ripoff of Indiana Jones. What are you talking about?" So I've never been a huge fan of it, and I'm fans. I wouldn't say I hate the movie by any means. I think it
Okay.
is fairly entertaining. I can watch it and be fine. I'm sure I could. Again, I haven't in a while, so
Hmm.
I'd like to rewatch it and see what I think of it now.
Hmm.
Um, Big fan of Nick Cage. He always does a great
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
He's
He's
always.
underrated, actually. I know he's an Oscar winner, but he gets a bad rap for
I know, and I
taking too
think
many movies. He's an actor. He's
yeah,
supposed to take movies.
yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I think he gives it his all no matter what he's doing,
Yeah.
whether it's
Yeah.
direct to video or not. He's doing it all with a lot of gusto. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not at all anything to do with him. The direction I
Sure.
think is just kind of average. Turtletop. I've seen a couple of his other movies, and I've never been impressed with the way he shoots films or directs
He
his
doesn't
actors.
get too crazy with like his shots or anything. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not too outside the box for that matter.
no, he's very much a kind of very straightforward kind of movie
Hmm.
maker, which is fine. A lot of directors make great careers out of that, and that's totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
The rest of the cast I think is just meh. You mentioned the
Mm.
kind of sidekick character. I don't remember particularly liking him. The love interest I felt totally fell flat for me. Her character I don't really even remember that well. Sean Bean's always good. I like Sean Bean a lot. I don't think he was given a
Yeah.
lot to do from what I remember. Like you said, he's not very menacing, particularly.
No,
I
not at
think of
all.
him.
Not at all.
I think of him in like another movie I almost put on this list, Patriot Games, where he plays a
Oh,
great character, a great villainous, like
I forgot he's in that.
uh,
That's the Harrison Ford
yeah, the Jack Ryan film with
Clancy.
Harrison Ford.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, he's
Gotcha.
great in that. So
Huh.
um all these actors have I think the ability to do more. I think it's all about the script and the direction. That is the problem
Yeah.
with it for
Sure.
me. Again, it's been a while since I've watched it, but I do remember it being good as far as effects go. Like you mentioned, them shooting on location a lot. I really like it when movies do that too, because it just makes it again feel more authentic and real.
Yeah.
When
Similar to
they're
Bourne in that
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
exactly,
And a lot of other
exactly.
movies, but yeah.
Yeah, and you can just tell, like you said, when it's a set, and when they move to a set, you can
Yeah.
tell it's a set, and when they're
Yeah.
on location, you can tell. So, yeah,
Right.
not a fan of it, honestly.
Okay.
I wouldn't give it. I don't think a negative review though. Maybe
Uh huh.
2.5
Okay.
stars. So I'm kind of like in the middle
Sure.
of it. I wouldn't say again. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie that I dislike. It's just not a favorite that I reach for often.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm glad you included it because it is very patriotic.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it belongs on the list. So, all right. So, your number one pick was National Treasure. Good choice. My number one most patriotic film is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So,
Mm.
here we're going way back to
Haven't seen this one.
1939.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen this one.
This is an oldie but a goodie. 1939 is considered one of the best years for film. You had Gone with the Wind. You also
Hmm.
had The Wizard of Oz released
Yeah.
that
That's a good
year.
one.
A
Yeah.
few other movies like a John Ford Western, one of his first collaborations with John Wayne. It's called Stagecoach. That was also released
Oh,
this
I've heard
year.
of that. Hmm.
It's just a big year for movies in
Hmm.
general. It's all black and white, over 2 hours long, 2 hours 10 minutes, and had a budget of 1.5 million. Ended up grossing over $9 million back then, which was a pretty good hit. nominated for
Okay.
11 Oscars. So a lot of Oscar nominations. It won for Best Original Story. So this is an original screenplay. It's not based on any existing material, book, or anything
Hmm.
like that. It's directed by one of the greats, Frank Capra,
Oh yeah, yeah.
who went on to after this do "It's a Wonderful Life," which is a
Right.
classic Christmas film, also with James Stewart, who
I have
stars
not
in this
seen that
one.
either.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, we need
No.
to talk about that one when we do our Christmas
Yeah,
lists
for sure.
in
I need to
December.
watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. It's a good one. But before this, he did a couple of other classics, a classic romantic comedy, one of the first kind of rom-coms called It Happened One Night with Clark
Hmm.
Gable and Claudette Colbert. He
Hmm.
did You Can't Take It With You, also with James Stewart, and a movie called Mr. Deeds Goes to Town,
Hmm.
which was later remade by Adam Sandler, just called Mr. Deeds, which I like both of those films actually. I think the Sandler one is really good, but
I'm guessing the
um,
original was less crass
it
than
was
the
much less
remake.
crass. Definitely. I thought he toned it down a little bit for Mr. Deeds
Well, I'm just
from
thinking of
his
the
other
public
films, but
peeing. That's the first thing that popped in my head.
right, yeah, exactly. Oh wait, no, I think you're thinking of Big Daddy.
Oh, I am. You're
Yeah,
right.
that's Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Deeds, he toned it
Gotcha.
down a little bit for
Gotcha.
because
Okay.
he knew it was
Yeah.
based on this classic. I think I remember Adam Sandler saying something about his grandmother was going to watch this one, so he had to tone it down a little bit.
Gotcha.
But the original's great. The original that it's based on is
Okay.
really, really good and
Mhm.
definitely worth watching. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was actually originally titled Mr. Deeds Goes to Washington. It was going to be a sequel
Oh. Oh,
to Mr.
really?
Deeds Goes to Town. For whatever reason, they ended up changing the story
Hmm.
enough to where they thought, this wouldn't work as a sequel. It needed to be its
Yeah.
own thing. So had
Hmm.
the new title of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. The story is one of a naive, idealistic young senator who is
Hmm.
elected to represent his state. And he basically, once he gets to Washington, D.C., he realizes that it is a cesspool of corruption. And
Shocker.
he kind of has to take on the establishment. Well, back then, that's the thing is back then it kind of,
Ah.
I mean, people
Well.
knew that there
Yeah.
was corruption there, but it was never put out in a movie like
Right.
this.
Well, it wasn't reported on, probably, or at least it
Exactly.
definitely wasn't pervasively reported like anything like that
Yes.
is these days. And people probably, I don't think people were a lot more innocent back then and wanted to believe
Sure.
that people in that position were just all, altruistic, or all, all for good.
Absolutely 100%. And they talked about this Blu-ray I have. It's one of these digibooks. I don't know if you've seen these before, where it has kind of a booklet where it talks
Oh
about
yeah.
the
Okay.
movie and the
Uh-huh.
actors in it and everything. And it's really interesting. I
Right.
haven't read it all, but has a lot of bonus features on the disc. And
Yeah.
they really talked a lot about that, about how at the time this was a movie that really bucked the system in a way that
Mm,
few movies had before it.
mm. Yeah.
And so yeah, it is this whole commentary on political corruption and special interest groups, and how the wealthy can kind of control the country in ways that they really shouldn't. It's very much an indictment of politicians and greedy individuals, and the media as well. The media are depicted in quite a negative light in this film.
Mm,
And it was funny, they talked about how there was this big screening they did in Washington, D.C. before the actual premiere.
mm.
And they invited all these politicians and all these, news groups and everything. And large portions of the audience walked out on the movie because they thought,
Yeah.
how dare
Interesting.
someone make a
Yeah.
movie about this, about painting us in
Yeah.
this light. And it was just a big scandal.
Huh.
So it's really interesting to go back and watch it and see how kind of tame it is compared to what we watch today. But
Yeah.
it's still just as
Interesting.
compelling a story as it was back then. I mean, really. And it's
Mm.
even more timely now, of
Yeah.
course, now
Yeah.
that we know how corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C. are.
Hmm.
So just one of these timeless films that I have a great time watching, all about all of the ideals that I talked about when we started the podcast, individualism, liberty, the kind of underdog story. It's all about truth and justice and perseverance, because once young Jefferson Smith, is the character Jimmy Stewart plays, arrives and starts to kind of uncover all this corruption, they, very much try to brush him aside, and because they think, he's going to be easy to push around. Basically,
Yeah.
that's kind of why they help him get elected, because
Yeah.
they think it's going to be easy to push this young guy around. He's not going to,
Sure.
know what's going on. We'll kind of preoccupy him with other things. And he ends up, when he gets into this senator's office, the senator who's passed away, who he's taking the place of, he gets in there with this character named Saunders, and she's played by Jean Arthur, who's a great actress I really like from back in the golden age. And she's very much a much more intelligent character, more cynical, not as naive as Smith is. And she really shows him the ropes. She kind of teaches him all the rules of how this whole thing works, and she kind of helps him on his journey. She's kind of over the whole thing, like I said, very cynical about it, even though she knows what's going on. And he kind of is the one that kind of prompts her to help him, uncover this and
Oh.
expose all these people. And so, they both have a great relationship, great chemistry there. You have Claude Rains, who's another big actor back in this day. He played the Invisible Man in the original Universal horror film. He's also in Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn.
Oh.
Bunch of big movies. He's in a lot of them. He ends up showing up later in a bunch of Hitchcock films like Notorious and others. And he's kind of the veteran senator mentor figure who brings Smith in, and he does an excellent job in it as well. There's a couple of scenes that are just really great that stand out. One of them is when Smith arrives in DC. He's never been there before. He's a huge fan of America. He's a really, patriotic guy. And so he takes this tour, and it's kind of this montage of all the monuments, Washington Monument, all these places that are, iconic now. And they just do a great job of photographing it and putting together this montage with the music. It's a really, really good scene. And then there's a scene at the end of the movie. I don't want to give too much away, but it kind of climaxes with this big filibuster he does
Mm.
in the middle of the Senate. And it's a really, really powerful scene. And he just does a great job. He's filibustering for hours and hours and hours. And it kind of just goes through
Yeah.
showcasing this. And, he starts to lose his voice and, like all this. It's just really, really great performance wise from Jimmy Stewart. He's one of my favorite actors. I think he
Mm.
always does a good job in everything he does, and this is no exception. So just a movie that I really like, a movie that very much is all about, again, the American spirit, American ideals that the country
Mm.
was founded on,
Gotcha.
and really, really enjoy all of it. There's another shot I'll mention that is of Stewart, and he's meeting Payne, who's the character played by Claude Rains, his daughter, who's this very beautiful kind of socialite, well-to-do character that he's very nervous around. And he's kind of just from the small town and has never really been to the city, and she's
Hmm.
dressed to the nines and the whole thing. And when they meet each other, Frank Capra did something really interesting where he doesn't put the camera on their faces. He gets Stewart's reaction to her walking in the room, and then he pans down to his hat. So he's holding his hat in his
Mm.
hands, and you're seeing him fumble around with his hat as you're just
While they're
hearing the
talking.
dialogue between the
Interesting.
two characters. And
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
really cool. He's just fumbling around with his hat. He drops it at one point, has to pick it back up. He's kind of like just messing with it. And I thought it was just such an interesting
That is different.
visual. Yeah,
Yeah.
something very different that I hadn't seen before that I really liked, and I thought was really, really fun moment. So yeah, all in all, again, I'll just say it's a great drama. It has great humor in it, lots of heart, and again, it's just a timeless story that I
Hmm.
think anyone can watch. Watching it today, it's just as relevant as it was back then, if
Hmm.
not more so.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. I
Yeah,
kind of like the fact that you crossed over some different decades because as I look at mine, all of mine are within a 10-year block, like
sure,
from 95 to '04. And I
right,
didn't do that on purpose, but,
sure,
some of that probably had to do with maybe the times, around then, post Persian Gulf War and post
right,
9/11. I don't know. Maybe that
yeah.
too. I don't know.
Yeah, very, very well
But
could. Very
that's a
well
good
could.
pick to have some of those that are in other decades, because yeah, there are others out there.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of film history, and so I really like
Yeah,
to highlight some older movies that
that's
people
good.
probably
Yeah,
haven't heard of, just to change it up and
absolutely. Yeah,
give some people some different ideas of
right.
what they can watch. And
And
a
that's
lot of
why I
these,
didn't go with Marvel movies because
right? Yeah, me too.
Captain America, they get enough airtime.
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of these are streaming. You can actually find these. Like I
Mm.
said, I think Searchers is on HBO. Mr. Smith might be as well. But yeah, you can look a lot of these up and you'll be able to find a lot of them. All right. So that is the end of our list, but we wanted to mention some honorable mentions, movies that almost made it into our list. Again, this was a very broad category. We could have gone several different ways with it, but I'll just run down a couple of mine. Then, Bert, you can give yours. One that I probably the closest to being put on my list was JFK, by
Oh
Oliver
yeah,
Stone
that's got some
with
good history in it for sure.
Kevin Costner. Yeah, it's
That's a good
excellent.
movie.
That's
Tons of
such
actors in that are
yes,
quality actors.
so many
Yeah.
good ones. So
Yeah.
that's a great one. I mentioned already
Mhm.
Captain America, The Winter Soldier was going to be in there. That
Yeah.
one was
Yeah.
very close. Another Western I like is Wyatt Earp. I think that's a
Oh,
really,
I
really
never
good one.
saw that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Kevin Costner as well.
Costner.
It's
Yeah.
basically Tombstone, but it's kind of gives you a broader range of his life. That's why I
Yeah. Yeah.
slightly prefer it to Tombstone myself.
Gotcha.
I already mentioned First Man, a great Neil Armstrong movie. American Graffiti,
Mhm.
George Lucas, really, really good movie. Air
Isn't
Force.
Ron Howard in that one?
Ron Howard is in that one with Richard
Yeah.
Dreyfuss
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
They
I need
both
to
got
watch
their
that one.
start there. Yeah, yeah. You should check
Yeah.
it out. The Patriot, I know we both
Yeah. That's a
mentioned as
good
being
one.
on our list. Tucker, The Man in His Dream, I have right
Oh,
up
yeah.
here. Uh,
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, yep.
Yeah.
Francis
I
Ford
watched that a
Coppola.
while back, long time ago. Yeah.
Really like that movie a lot. All the
Mhm.
President's Men,
Mm.
huge fan of that movie. There's another one called Dave. Have you seen
Oh, I
Dave,
love
the
Dave. Yeah.
president?
Kevin
Yeah,
Kline.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
pulled
like
that
that
one out
one.
every now and then. That's a good movie.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that a lot. And
Sigourney Weaver.
then Grapes of Wrath, Jeremiah
Okay.
Johnson, I like a lot. The Sandlot, I thought about putting in there,
Oh,
and Dances with Wolves too,
okay. Yeah,
is
that's a good
another
one
one I
too.
like. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are some, and the other ones you see around here. They Live, of course, American Tail,
Wait,
Spirit.
what is They Live? Isn't it a horror movie?
They Live is a yeah.
I
We can
never
have a
saw it, but
discussion about They Live um, at some other point. It's kind of hard to
okay.
explain. It's
Okay,
yeah,
that's
it's
all right.
kind of
Yeah.
horror, but it has a lot of political
Okay.
commentary in there too.
Yeah,
What are your
gotcha.
honorable mentions?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, Top Gun and Maverick are both good ones.
Yeah,
Stripes. Have you ever seen Stripes
I
with
have.
Bill
I saw
Murray?
it
Yeah.
recently, actually. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
There's so many funny parts in that one.
yeah.
A Few Good Men, but we already kind of
Mm,
highlighted Tom Cruise movies, so I
right.
didn't really get into those.
Yeah.
National Treasure 2.
Okay.
Oh, Dave's on my honorable
Oh,
mentions.
cool.
Yeah, Rocky 4,
Yeah.
um, The Patriot, The American President.
Oh, yeah. Michael
Yeah,
Douglas.
yeah, and that band, yeah.
Good.
Behind Enemy Lines with Owen
I
Wilson.
haven't seen that.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen that one.
I'm the only one in America that even liked it, so I didn't
Okay.
want to put it on my list, I guess. And then United 93. Did you ever see that one?
I did. I did. That is
That
a
was
good movie.
intense.
Yeah,
Paul
very
Greengrass.
intense.
Yeah,
Yep.
very good
Greengrass. I
movie.
like him a lot.
That was, yeah, intense.
Mhm.
Zero Dark 30. That was pretty good.
I still
You
haven't
know.
seen that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're gonna laugh. Pacific Rim. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I mean, they kind of rally the troops for that one too. I mean, it is
Sure. Yeah.
America.
It's a little more international, but
Yeah.
I would accept that one. I'm a
I
huge fan of that
actually,
movie.
I actually love Pacific Rim. I just didn't know that I wanted to fit it in with. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
and then the last three again. People might think these are trash movies, but the Fallen trilogy, which
Oh,
is
Fallen. Yeah.
like Angel has fallen or Olympus has fallen.
Olympus,
I don't even know what
London,
they are.
and yeah.
London, yeah,
Yeah.
and one of them's not even American.
Right.
I mean, they're kind of like eating a bag of potato chips or something. You're like, yeah,
Right.
that tastes
Right.
good, but there's really not a whole lot to them. But I enjoy
Right.
them.
Okay.
So,
I got you. Yeah, I saw the
yeah.
first Has Fallen film and never watched the sequels because I
Ah.
didn't care for it that much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like
Um,
all three.
okay.
They're all the same movie
I
basically.
do
But
like Gerard Butler, but yeah, wasn't a
yeah,
huge fan. So
gotcha,
good.
gotcha.
Well, those are good honorable mentions. Let us know in the comments what your top five are. We want to know what you think are the most patriotic films. Make sure you give us a like, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to get notifications, and make sure you come back and tune in for the next episode of the Real World Podcast. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us.